Welcome to NTD News. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Here are today's top stories. Iran faces multiple challenges as protests continue and citizens call for the country's head of state to step down. World powers are also speaking out. Iran announces it has arrested suspects in the shooting down of a passenger jet, a tragedy that the regime initially denied responsibility for. The Democratic Party's 7th presidential debate is set to take place in Iowa tonight. The field of candidates has shrunk, but the tension between them is growing. And the future of retail stores. Will human interaction die, or do retailers have a different vision in mind? Public unrest continues in Tehran as challenges facing the Iranian regime continue to mount, and world powers are speaking out.
Shouting voices at a university in Tehran. Something is causing a stir. 2 flags painted on the ground side by side, one for Israel, one for the United States. To trample over the flags would show disrespect. The students file along the narrow gap of unpainted ground, avoiding having to tread on either country's badge. When 2 brazen individuals choose to walk on the flags, hostile chants begin. Some students raise their fists as though hitting the air. Students are among those protesting in Iran. In daily demonstrations, they chant, "Where is justice?" and calling for the removal of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Police have responded to some protests with a violent crackdown. The full extent of what is happening is difficult to assess because of limits on independent reporting. Iran said on Tuesday it had detained 30 people involved in the unrest. Brian Hook, U.S. State Department's head of Iran, said on Monday that the Iranian regime is facing big challenges.
Our view for over almost 3 years now is that the Iranian people hate this regime. They're tired of its brutality. They're tired of their money being spent on foreign wars and on militaries that can't be at peace with their neighbors.
He said that as well as domestic unrest, the regime had other problems. New sanctions imposed on Iran by the U.S. add to an already failing economy.
The regime is financially broke.
Hook said Iran is also facing difficulties in its regional network of proxy militias, those in countries like neighboring Iraq and nearby Syria and Lebanon.
Its proxies are financially weak, and the proxies lost their top commander, Qasem Soleimani,
who was taken up by U.S. forces earlier this month.
We put together a campaign of diplomatic isolation, economic pressure, and military deterrence. The goal is twofold. First, we want to deprive the regime of resources it needs to perpetrate its malign activity around the world. And second, we just want Iran to behave like a normal nation.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke of U.S. intentions for handling Iran. Wednesday's shooting down of a Ukrainian passenger plane that killed 176 people has only added to Iran's problems. Iran is accountable to the other countries who lost citizens that were aboard the plane. This includes Canada, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Germany, Sweden, and the UK. Coupled with public unrest on the streets of Tehran, it seems Iran is facing challenges both at home and abroad.
And Britain, France, and Germany today decided to trigger a dispute mechanism in the 2015 arms control agreement with Iran. This amounts to formally accusing Iran of violating the agreement that limits Iran's nuclear activities. The result for Iran could mean UN sanctions that were lifted under the deal would be reimposed. And more on that Ukrainian plane that went down last week. Iran said today it has arrested an undisclosed number of suspects accused of playing a role in its shooting down.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said Tuesday the crash of a Ukrainian passenger plane that killed 176 people was an unforgivable mistake by the country's military. As the country deals with one of the greatest public challenges to their clerical rulers since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, Rouhani said Iran would punish all those responsible for what it has called the accidental shooting down of the jet, adding the tragic event would be investigated properly.
The fact that our armed forces very clearly and openly confessed to their mistake and apologized to the people was a good first step, and the next step shall be taken as well.
Rouhani went on to give his assurance that something like this would not happen again, and that his government were accountable to Iranian and other nations who lost lives in the plane crash. Iran's judiciary have arrested an undisclosed number of suspects for their role in the crash, as anti-government demonstrations triggered by the disaster entered a fourth day. After days of denying blame for the crash, Iran acknowledged on Saturday that it had shot down the plane during a high state of alert, hours after it had fired missiles at US targets in Iraq as retaliation for the killing of Iran's most powerful military commander.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi indicated that the House will vote tomorrow on a resolution to name the impeachment managers for the Senate trial of President Trump and transmit the articles to the chamber. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said last night that the House vote to name the impeachment managers could be tomorrow. He added that the Senate has practical problems if they were to move sooner, since 3 Democratic senators are participating in the presidential debate. After several weeks' delay to formally send the articles, Pelosi's move will kick the impeachment fight officially into the Senate's court. There, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is readying a resolution of his own to set out the rules of the trial. And 6 candidates take the stage tonight at the Des Moines CNN-registered Democratic presidential debate in Iowa. This is the last face-to-face meeting of the hopefuls prior to the Hawkeye State's all-important caucuses.
Fireworks already sparking, and the 6 Democratic presidential candidates haven't even taken the stage yet. The controversy is between Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren.
Disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me and has known me for a long time.
Warren says Sanders told her in 2018 that a woman couldn't win the White House. Sanders, in a statement to CNN, calls the claim ludicrous to believe.
I think that there are a certain number of people who would like to see a woman elected, and I understand that.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, as a frontrunner, takes center stage at the debate.
I think we represent the broadest coalition of people, not just any one segment of the party, but young, old, brown, black, people, women, men.
Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg says it's time for a different kind of leader.
The purpose of the presidency is not for the glorification of the president. It's for the unification and the empowerment of the American people.
Meanwhile, businessman Tom Steyer.
I think that the thing that has put me on this stage, and it is the same for every single person who's running for president, is message.
And Senator Amy Klobuchar hope to boost their profiles during the debate.
Return to sanity. So that is my plan.
The debate starts at 9 p.m. Eastern on CNN. Candidates needed to reach polling and fundraising minimums to make it to the stage. The Treasury Department has dropped its designation of China as a currency manipulator, days before top officials of the world's 2 largest economies are due to sign a new trade agreement.
The U.S. Treasury Department says China will no longer be branded a currency manipulator. The move on Monday is seen as a symbol of goodwill as the 2 countries get ready to sign a trade deal. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin first slapped Beijing with the label back in August when trade tensions were soaring. It was the first time the Treasury had done so in 25 years. Mnuchin accused China of deliberately holding down the value of its currency to make its goods cheaper to sell overseas. But according to the Treasury's latest report, China has made, quote, enforceable commitments to refrain from competitive devaluation. It also noted that China's yuan currency has bounced back after hitting a low against the dollar in September. China responded to the move on Tuesday. Customs Vice Minister Zhou Zhiwu.
Let me put it simply. It was the right choice and has positive implications for bilateral trade.
But the Treasury's decision hasn't sat well with everyone. According to some critics, China never should have got the label in the first place. One former senior Treasury official said the decision was made, quote, in a moment of presidential pique. But critics on the other side, like Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, blasted the Trump administration for backing down. In a statement, Schumer said, quote, unfortunately, President Trump would rather cave to President Xi Jinping than stay tough on China. The world's 2 largest economies are getting ready to sign a deal to ease an 18-month-long trade war. Chinese Vice Premier Liu He is in Washington ahead of the ceremony, set to take place on Wednesday.
Boeing is ushering in a new CEO to deal with a crisis caused by 2 deadly crashes and the grounding of the company's best-selling plane. A professor from Northwestern University's business school spoke about the challenges facing Boeing's new leader and how he can restore the company's reputation.
A professor at Kellogg School of Management discussed what Boeing's new CEO needs to do to salvage the company's reputation and get the infamous 737 MAX in the skies again.
This is such a difficult situation for a new CEO. On the one hand, you have all this public pressure, all this government pressure coming at Boeing, and that's, a huge thing to deal with. But I also think clearly they have some internal issues they've got to address as well.
Since 2 deadly plane crashes led to the grounding of Boeing's 737 MAX fleet last year, the company has struggled to respond. Employees have also criticized the company's operations.
It's been so bad in a lot of different ways that I think there's huge branding challenges. The question is, how do you get people to feel safe, to feel good when they show up at the airport and they find themselves flying on a 737 MAX?
David Calhoun was hired as Boeing's new CEO on Monday. Before his departure, the company's outgoing CEO tried to address the technical problems that led to the crash, but failed to convince the Federal Aviation Administration to let the 737 MAX fly again.
Protesters rallied outside the New Jersey State House last night, opposing a bill on vaccinations in public schools. A large crowd gathered in Trenton as lawmakers debated a bill that would eliminate religion as a reason to not vaccinate public school students. The proposal would exempt private schools and daycare centers. But some parents say the bill still takes the control from parents and gives it to the government. Lawmakers say that the bill is expected to pass in the new legislative session that begins on Tuesday. There is no word yet if the governor will sign the bill. And with the rapid advancement of technology, some are questioning what it might mean for the future of retail stores. Will they die out thanks to online shopping, or will they evolve with the times? NTD's Melina Weisskopf investigates.
So we're here at the Big Show in New York City, which is hosted by National Retail Federation. What this kind of is an experience for retail companies to come together, network, look at the future of retail business together. What we're seeing is a common theme centered around how in-store customer interaction and human experience kind of combines and balances and can be enhanced by the digital technological advancement that we're seeing within the retail business.
And so I think one of the common themes going forward is finding more ways to create human connection, human interaction. The world needs that.
He and many other retail movers and shakers are discussing how artificial intelligence can be used to promote and enhance human interaction in stores, instead of completely doing away with it.
You have to be able to employ the technology strategically so you're always providing meaning and intention with what you're doing, and you're not just putting noise or static to them.
News reports in recent years shows that a number of stores are closing down, a phenomenon commonly phrased as the retail apocalypse. However, a study by Statistica shows that from 2017 to 2019, more stores have actually been opening than closing.
Digital retailers are now getting a physical presence. You had retailers who had only a physical presence who are doing extensive development of their online presence.
Embracing technology may be the outlet brick-and-mortar stores have been looking for, as they strive to provide a shopping experience filled with more authentic human connection. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News, New York.
The Australian Open qualifying matches were delayed in Melbourne today because of bushfire smoke. Questions have been raised about the city's increasingly poor air quality as bushfires continue raging across the country.
The Australian Open qualifying matches were scheduled to begin on Tuesday, but smoke from the bushfires has blanketed the city of Melbourne and forced the games to be delayed. The matches were to start at 10 a.m. local time, but were pushed back by an hour. The CEO of Tennis Australia defended their decision.
As you all know, and I say this consistently, is the health and well-being of not only the players, the fans, our staff is of utmost importance, and any decision we make will be around that, the health and well-being of that group.
Grey haze was so thick, Health officials issued a public warning.
So smoke today in Melbourne is in the very poor to hazardous range. When you get to the hazardous range, really anyone can develop symptoms. There's eye and throat and nose irritation. People can have a cough develop or worsening of cough or even wheeze.
The first round of the Australian Open tournament is to begin next week, despite bushfires that have been burning for nearly 3 months across Australia. Players are pledging money to the cause, including Serena Williams, who donated her earnings after winning the Auckland Classic on Sunday. And a campaign under the hashtag Aces for Bushfire Relief is encouraging players and individuals to raise funds for every ace served to relief and recovery efforts. Meanwhile, as tournament organisers monitor conditions in the lead-up to the Grand Slam, along the Yarra River, rowers and runners were out as normal, grinning and bearing the smoky haze.
Up next, a sinkhole in China opens up under a bus, swallowing the vehicle and its passengers. That and more after the break.
It was special for us.
Bring your family, let your children experience this.
I know my daughter just loves it. When the curtain first opened, I looked out at her face and she was amazed by what she saw.
It's great for the whole family.
And I have a granddaughter. I want her to see something like this because it'll probably enrich her soul and her development as a person. It would change her life.
It's hard for kids to listen to parents all the time, but when they hear it from an outside influence as well, reinforcing your values, that's great.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And her birthday was Friday, so we surprised her with tickets.
I was just so amazed. They're amazing, amazing dancers.
The girls are so elegant and beautiful, and the colors are amazing.
It's just amazing. It's truly breathtaking. Just the story. There's a story behind everything as well, which is amazing. There's so much culture.
It's a bridge between meditation and peace and where we are now in our busy lives.
As an adult and a teacher, it's awesome to see kids reacting and having that positive reaction to the show.
I will see it next year and year after that and the year after that. It is just incredible, absolutely beautiful.
I wish I could see it again, like right now.
A road collapse in China swallowed a bus, killing at least 6 people. Here are the details.
A sinkhole swallowed a bus with pedestrians in northeast China this Monday, killing 6 people. The state media says 16 are injured and 10 more are missing. Surveillance footage shows people were waiting for the bus when the ground suddenly opened up, swallowing the bus and those standing close to it. Some people fled. A handful others stayed on the edge trying to rescue the people in the hole, but they also plunged into the pit when it suddenly expanded. The bus sank deeper into the hole, followed by an explosion and a plume of heavy smoke. Beijing News reported the hole was around 33 feet in diameter and at least 39 feet deep. The incident happened outside a hospital in Xining, China. State-owned media says the search and rescue work is ongoing. Sinkholes are not uncommon in China, where they are often blamed on the construction work and the country's rapid pace of development.
Chinese state media says an explosion hit a chemical plant in Zhuhai City in southern China today. No casualties have been confirmed so far. State television channel CCTV showed footage of facilities on fire and workers running away from the plant. Local media reported that more than 200 firefighters and 40 fire trucks were mobilized to extinguish the fire. According to CCTV, the cause of the incident is under investigation. The chemical plant is located in Gaolan Port and mainly processes petrochemicals. And coming up, foreign companies in Hong Kong wonder whether or not to stay in the city, while months of protests start to calm. More on that after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America,
A soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled, and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
Now to Hong Kong. Amid prolonged protests, some Western firms operating in the city are unsure. Should they stay or should they go? Our French correspondent followed a French consulting group that has been asking this very question.
Hong Kong is not just a battleground where pro-democracy protesters fight for the right to universal suffrage. It is also a global financial and business center that connects China to the rest of the world. The unrest sent Hong Kong's economy into a recession for the first time in a decade. It also has consequences for Western companies doing business in Hong Kong. Francois Rivard, CEO of the international consulting group Astrakhan, monitors his employees based in Hong Kong.
We lived through some very tense moments. Our clients asked our staff in Hong Kong to stay at home, not to go into the streets.
He said that happened when police shot a teenage protester in the street last year. Rivard's company provides digital services to around 40 other companies, including banks and luxury retail groups. According to Rivard, when the protests began, some of his clients hesitated to move their headquarters to other Asian financial centers such as Singapore. They eventually stayed to observe the outcome of the protests.
We need to anticipate whether or not the Chinese army will intervene, for example. Eventually, it didn't happen for now. The situation we acknowledge is that Western companies are waiting and observing.
With the approach of the Chinese New Year, Rivard says the situation is much calmer. But after months of pro-democracy protests, businesses in Hong Kong are also paying particular attention to the U.S.-China trade war. Phase 1 of the trade deal between the U.S. and China includes an agreement for more American goods to be sold to China in exchange for a reduction in some U.S. tariffs. It is expected to be signed on January 15th. David Vives, NTD News.
New research finds almost 2 million people in Hong Kong, about a third of its adult population, are estimated to have experienced symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, during months of social unrest in the city.
According to the study, the number was 6 times higher than 4 years ago. Levels of depression are comparable to trauma produced by terrorist attacks and war zones. Hong Kong has a population of 7.5 million, of which 6.3 million are adults. The protests began last June, focusing on a controversial bill that would have allowed the extradition of suspects to mainland China. The bill was later withdrawn, but demonstrations have since evolved into a broader movement demanding investigation into police brutality and democratic reform. As the protests continue, police fired more than 16,000 rounds of tear gas, with about 7,000 people arrested, 2,500 injuries, 2 confirmed deaths, and multiple questionable suicides. The study, published in the Lancet Medical Journal, was based on surveys of more than 18,000 people between 2009 and 2019. It was the largest and longest study of the population-wide impact of social unrest on mental health in the world. Researchers also warned that their findings might underestimate the extent of mental health problems, as they did not include under 18s, who make up a large proportion of pro-democracy protesters.
Up next, two daredevils take on the challenge of flying through a natural arch known as Heaven's Gate in China. That and more when we return.
Are you tired of newspapers spinning the truth and pushing false narratives? And are you looking for honest coverage of Spygate, the true story of collusion? Or the truth behind the crisis at our southern border? Or how the Chinese Communist Party is working to subvert America and our way of life? Then you need to check out the Epoch Times newspaper. It's independent, nonpartisan, and it doesn't push any political agendas. Just go to readepoch.com and try it yourself for a full month for just $1. You'll absolutely love it.
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
President Trump turned sports fan for an evening as he watched #1 Louisiana State University and #3 Clemson battle it out in the college football playoff championship. Trump flew to Louisiana for last night's game at the Superdome in New Orleans, accompanied by First Lady Melania Trump. The president and First Lady walked onto the field shortly before the game for the singing of the national anthem. Fans from both teams cheered loudly, with some yelling out, "USA, USA." Others chanted 4 more years. Trump was in friendly territory. He secured a nearly 20-point victory in Louisiana in the 2016 presidential election. And on the other side of the world, two daredevils take on the challenge of flying through the famed Heaven's Gate in China wearing jetpacks. Frenchmen Fred Fugen and Vince Raffet jumped out of a helicopter in Hunan province located in southern China before flying through the air with carbon fiber wings powered by 4 reactors. Excited crowds watched as the pair soared through the air, navigating around the area's mountainous terrain. They then took on the challenge of flying through the natural archway known as Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, just a bit scary because we fly so fast that when you are so far away to begin the line, the hole doesn't look big. But it's actually pretty big, but for sure it was very intense, to fly in there.
Fellow jetman Fugen described the experience as a dream come true.
The dream came true, so it was an amazing experience, coming from behind and you see the hole and then going through at that speed, following my friend. It was emotional.
According to organizers, the equipment Fugen and Raffet wore can reach speeds of up to 250 miles per hour. It's controlled by the human body and can change direction as well as perform loops. And that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer.